This project is an FP7 funded project, and we have 14 partners from 9 EU member states, and you'll meet a few of them during the course of the day. At the outset, we all agreed that risk and benefit communication is challenging, and I was the CEO of the Irish Food Safety Authority, and we had food communication in our remit, and chairman of the European Food Safety Authority, and risk communication was a big part of our work. And at that time I thought I knew something about risk communication, but it's only when you interact with people who are behavioural psychologists and social scientists and communication gurus that you realise that it's not easy. So communicating and talking about communication in the comfort of the research domain is quite different from when you're in the eye of the storm. And those of you in the audience who are in the eye of the storm know that it's not easy. We've a complex, rapidly evolving media landscape, and you'll hear more about this during the course of the day. One time it was the conventional media, newspapers, television and radio. Then the conventional media went online, so some people read their newspaper on their phone or on their laptop. And then you have online news, then you have people using Google search engines, then you have mini blogs, major blogs, and social networking, and every day there's something new happening, so it's dynamic. And so anybody who's in the business of risk communicating on a daily basis, they're not paid well enough, Anna-Laura, okay? The publicly passively receive information, and then they actively look for information, and we'll hear about that in the course of the day, and it's quite different. And what are the characteristics of the people who passively receive information, and what is the behaviour that people who actually seek information themselves? There's been an explosion of new channels. Every day things change. I'm lucky that I'm hiding from the real world in academia. And in our university, about 2 years ago, we did a survey, and the students spend an average of 10 hours per week actively on their Facebook sites. That was 2 years ago. So if you spend 10 hours a week actively learning Chinese, you'd probably be fluent after 12 months. Content and context analysis. This is a huge, huge issue. It changes how people seek information and how they absorb the information. The big challenge for everybody is understanding information-seeking behaviour, and this is what we explored in parts of this project. Communicating uncertainty. This is actually the hardest thing for anybody who's trying to do this, whether you work for a company or whether you're trying to damage limitation in a crisis, or you work for a regulatory agency, because the information may be changing every day. And we have this culture of openness and transparency in many of the agencies, and trying to be open and transparent with uncertainty is difficult for people to comprehend, and especially the attention spans of people they're being bombarded with so much information makes it challenging. We've new tools and resources, and we developed 2 new tools in this project, and so you'll hear about those during the course of the day. And we were fortunate at the very start of the project. We were saying, now, how will we real test this stuff? And BSE is over, so there won't be any more crisis. We just finished with the dioxin crisis in Ireland in 2008, and said, we might be very unlucky, and there will be no crisis in the next 3 years. But we didn't cause the German dioxin crisis. We didn't cause the bean sprout crisis in Germany either, and we didn't have anything to do with the horsemeat crisis. But they all came along, and we were like opportunistic pathogens. We used them as some of our case studies, so you'll hear some about these. The key things that we're trying to do in the project, we're trying to characterise consumer behaviour in attaining, interpreting, responding to, and utilising information to help target populations and customise messages. It is possible now to customise your message for subsets of the population, so really this was a big challenge for us going forward. Exploring the potential of the new social media, and sometimes there's a generational thing that younger people are more proactive than people in older generations, but it's amazing who's actually using the social media, how the social media is more advanced in certain member states, and how the different channels break down in the different member states. We have produced a guidance for risk communicators on how best they can use these media for food risk and benefit communication. Risk communication is one thing, but like the opportunity to get people to change their behaviour and adopt different types of lifestyles, because like basically people's health is their most valuable asset, but we actually do our best to damage it by some of our lifestyle behaviour. And so benefit communication, it's not sexy, benefit communication, and a lot of the benefit communication appears in the lifestyle sections of the media rather than, it's not newsworthy. There's no big breaking news, 5 portions of veg is good for you every day. It's hard to make it into a sexy story, but we have to. And we have developed a communication resource centre and best practice guidelines to assist EU-wide organisations in their communication, information and education services. Many people, communication isn't their day job, and so they get match fit whenever there's a crisis, and it might be years before your organisation has a similar crisis, and the people who had the knowledge and got that experience may have moved on, so there's new people. So we need to capture all the learnings from every crisis. These are some of the things that the team did, and you'll hear about them in the course of the day. We did in-depth qualitative interviews with food consumers, scientific experts, communication experts and journalists, both classical and citizen journalists. Citizen journalists is where any of us with our mobile phone can actually send out a message that can go viral. And interesting that some of you might remember the plane that landed on the Hudson River, and that video clip of that plane landing, that was on all the network channels. That video was made with somebody's mobile phone who happened to be just there at the time. So everybody can be a journalist, and so that's challenging. We did a web-based survey with a representative sample of food consumers in 9 EU countries, and so it was interesting. You'll hear the findings of that. Mainstream media analysis. The mainstream media is still there, and there are a lot of people who actually that's their source of information. How do newspapers report on risk, and how do consumers react to newspapers' risk reporting? And the conventional journalists feed off the social media and vice versa. And it's interesting to look at what's been said about food risks and benefits on the different platforms, and who gets traction, and how some things can go viral. I mean, for a company, if your positive message goes viral in the social media, that's fantastic. But if a negative message goes viral, it's not good for the company. Also, there's a lot of misinformation can go this way. So the idea to look at content analysis of Twitter and blogs and forums during different crises we did, and online comments, and it's quite amazing because a Nobel Prize winner sends a tweet, or I could send a tweet, mine might get more traction. So opinion becomes fact in the social media, so it's interesting. As I said, we were very lucky, or unlucky for some of you who were involved in the front line with these, but we thought nothing might ever happen. It might be very quiet during the 3 years of the project, but no, there was no shortage of instances. We did a retrospective look at the Irish dioxin crisis, and we compared it with a German dioxin crisis. It's interesting that you'd say, well, look, we will capture the learnings of this one and we won't have another similar crisis, but we did. The German E. coli outbreak, that's an amazing story for an epidemiologist, never mind for a risk communicator. It shows you how long the food chain. To see how the media react, the horse meat story was interesting. And then we looked at benefit stuff, overconsumption of red meat, functional foods, and the perception of the consumers about pesticides in their food. So there was no shortage of interesting things to look at. There is a tool called the Visata. One of our partners developed this tool, and this is an online engagement tool. And often we ask the consumers questions in surveys, or we try and get the consumer's opinion. But this actually gives you the facility to ask the consumers what questions would they like answered, and so it's a way to online interaction. If you're going to introduce some policy, it's a way to use the public as a barometer, and it has been looked at by several of the food regulatory agencies. But the Department of Agriculture in the UK have used this on several occasions. So this is the email or the website, and so these presentations for the day are in a memory stick in the pack. But I don't think this web address is in the memory stick, presentation in the memory stick. So you should write that down and have a look at this, because some of you might find this interesting, and it's constantly evolving by the partner in the project who's developing this, and you'll hear a little bit about it later. But that's the website to look at, and all of the presentations are on the memory stick in your pack, right? Risk and benefit communication is challenging. We'll all agree on that one, and there's a complex, rapidly evolving media landscape. So we developed an online resource centre, and you'll hear about this during the day, and it's actually But this is just a screenshot of the one that's on the web, but like it's about, click on any of these and it opens up to a lot of information. And the people that put the information on this come from a different way of looking at it, sometimes from people that are in the front line, and they've used the case studies as good examples. So it's a good resource for anybody that is in the risk communication and benefit communication business. It's developed also for use on an iPad or any of the pads, and also we have it for the smartphones. So basically it's very user friendly to use. One of the big issues is that when you come to the end of these FP7 projects, useful instruments that have been developed in it, like the project ends, but we need someone to adopt this child, and we'll talk about that later on, because it is a resource when you see about it. You know, during the project we had a lot of opportunities to disseminate the information as it was going on, and so we produced a lot of media type stories just to highlight it. And you know, like journalists engage on this project because that's their core business, communicating. Conference and workshops, the partners went to lots of different places. It was an enjoyable project to work on. You could have been in Switzerland, Ireland, USA, Norway, Spain, and Germany. There are just a few. So it's topical. Everybody's interested in how you communicate better, you know. Lots of scientific publications were produced, and so there is a science. And so, like, everybody thinks they can communicate, including myself. I thought I could. And it's only when you talk to behavioural economists and social scientists and anthropologists, you really need to try and figure out what's going on inside in people's heads. And no two people seem to think the same. Like, I'm a vet as well as a medic. You can kind of predict what animals are going to do, but you can't predict what humans do. And there are more papers in the pipeline. One of the main, our principal objective in many of the EU-funded projects is to develop new stars for the future. And so we were very lucky that we had some great students and researchers engaged with the project. And like, this is some of the output: the 6 PhD students, 7 master students, and 11 undergraduate students coming through the project. And so all of these will be the stars for the future, and I'm definitely sure we have a few stars. And so they took the opportunity to use the material that we were working on for their thesis.